Hello and welcome to TechFunnel.com's interview series. My name is Danny White, and today we have the opportunity to talk to Jim Stroud. Over the past decade, Jim has built an expertise in sourcing and recruiting strategy, public speaking, lead generation, video production, podcasting, online research, competitive intelligence, online community management, and training. He has consulted for Microsoft, Google, and among a host of startup companies. During his tenure with Randstad SourceRight, he alleviated the recruitment headaches of their clients worldwide as their global head of sourcing and recruiting strategy. He now serves Click IQ as its VP of Product Evangelist. Jim has created and sold 4 online properties, authored 5 HR-related books, and hosted the popular online video series, The Jim Stroud Show. His latest project, the Jim Stroud podcast, explores the future of work, life, and everything in between. Welcome, Jim. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I feel special.
Awesome. Well, to build on top of that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the world of recruiting.
Yeah. I've been in the recruiting game for 2 decades, which is amazing to me. Really flown by. Initially, I entered into this field of work by accident, or actually by force in a way. I was dating someone at the time, and my career pursuits were centered around Hollywood. I wanted to be a screenwriter.
Oh, wow.
Direct films and so forth. So I was doing short videos, music videos, things like that. I was writing screenplays, had a short story newsletter that I was publishing. I was not really going anywhere with that. It wasn't really taking off. And so my girlfriend at the time, in her own way, said, if you want to be with me, you need to get a real job. So I wanted to be with her. So I went to the campus career center, and then ad on the board that said get paid to surf the internet. And at the time, I just barely knew what the internet was. My recollection of the internet at that time was it was a place to look at women in bikinis. That's pretty much what
Ooh.
they were looking at for. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So when I went to interview for the job, the person told me that I interviewed with, her name was Rachel. She said, yeah, we're looking for people to surf the net to find resumes because people are putting their resumes online. We need folks to find them. And I said, so how do you do that? And she changed the subject, which let me know that, okay, you don't know how to do it, which makes sense. You're hiring somebody to know how to do that. So I remember leaving the interview, going home, going to Yahoo. Google was part of Yahoo back then. Back in my day.
Yeah.
That's where Google was. And I remember reading the help menu, the help guide to understand how to even search for anything. And after I read through it, I did a search. I found maybe 3 or 4 resumes, and I sent it to her. This was in 2 hours of leaving the interview. And I said, is this it? And she was like, you're hired.
Wow.
I've been doing it ever since. That was way back in 1997. To really dig myself there.
Awesome. Yep. Incredible. So I guess an interesting question, how did you come from what got you interested in screenwriting to begin with?
Well, I've always been a fan of movies. I've always been a fan of television, super big fan of comics. So to live in this era of the Marvel age when there's so many comic movies, I'm really a happy fanboy. So that was pretty much what got me into the screenwriting part. Just being creative. I've always enjoyed being creative. And that has really been a part of, I think, creating my brand over the years. Even though I started, you could say, back in 1997 with the sourcing and recruiting, I've always extended my creative side in my work in one way or another. I was one of the first, can't say I'm the first, I don't know, but I was one of the first recruiters on Twitter, one of the first recruiters that I knew of who had a blog. I was podcasting as early as 2000, still podcasting now, obviously. I published a magazine of recruiter training that I did back then. I've always been sort of entrepreneurial in that regard. I helped create SourceCon, which is the first global conference on sourcing back in '07. So I've always been creative, always been entrepreneurial, and that's translated throughout my career, whether I was doing my own thing or I was being intrapreneurial, creating products or offerings inside of a company under their umbrella in one way. So this is always how I've been.
Gotcha. Very cool. So fast forward over the past 20 years, 2 decades, as you mentioned, you've consulted many companies on their recruiting strategies. So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you see currently with recruitment at the most senior levels?
Not being flexible with requirements. You know, seeing that people match a job description perfectly. If they say they want someone with 5 years of this and 2 years of that, a lot of managers want someone exactly with 5 years and exactly 2 years. Not allowing for the fact that a college degree may not necessarily be necessary for a role. I think some companies are starting to open up to that, but a lot of them overall are not. I think sometimes they are myopic in how they view the skills that they need, that they don't consider transferable skills as much as I think they should. For example, someone who is a good planner has to be very meticulous about getting things in order and getting people there, that kind of thing. And they would make a very good administrative assistant. If someone is trying to hire an administrative assistant, they're going to look for admin experience on their resume, and they won't see, they may see event planning, but they might not correlate that that's a transferable skill. So I'll go ahead and interview that person, even though an administrative assistant is nowhere on their resume.
Right.
I see a lot of companies ignoring that transferable skill. Also believe that a lot of companies see themselves, which isn't a bad thing per se, but they think that they have the gravitas of, say, a Facebook or a Google, and as such, everyone should want to work there. Because they feel that their company is awesome, which they should, especially on the senior level. But they don't take into account that maybe the candidate doesn't think that their company is so awesome or good as they do. So they get offended that how dare you not see the company as awesome as I do? Maybe I don't want to recruit you because you don't see the obvious of how great we are. And so that being the case, they don't get into a sales mode. They don't think that they shouldn't have to sell the company to the candidate per se. And I think that is a big mistake because the market being what it is, I mean, I think I read just today, actually, I read how the unemployment rate is down to 3.6% or something nationally. So candidates have a lot of options. And I think some companies, and again, this isn't necessarily the fault of everyone in the company, but I think they're not doing a good job at monitoring their employer brand. So although they may, in their bubble that they operate in, everything is wonderful, but in some other parts of the company, maybe things aren't that wonderful. And so maybe they're not monitoring their employer brand so much, and so they can't understand why people aren't, knocking down the doors to interview for them as they would to Facebook or Google. And then thirdly, I think another big issue is that companies tend to be too reactive as opposed to being proactive. I can sort of see both sides of the issues because, being in the field for so long, you as a recruiter or hiring manager, you have so many jobs that you have to fill today. So you have 40 or 50 jobs that need to be filled right now and have been open for too long. But at the same time, you have to be proactive and look at what's coming down the pike, so to speak, in terms of your product strategy and the things you want to build. And if you're going to build this super widget, you're going to need these skills. And if you're not proactively looking for people with those skills, by the time you're ready to produce that widget, then you're going to slow down production because you have not pipelined in advance. What I think a lot of companies are not doing, what they should be doing, is talent mapping. Because of all the talk of talent scarcity, and that's certainly a reality, I think if companies were focusing more on finding companies that do the type of work if you find the right companies that do the certain type of work that you need done, then by virtue of that, you'll find the people, And I think a lot of times companies are focusing on finding the person as opposed to finding the right companies. Because if you find the right companies, they have people there, and then you can potentially poach them.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would like to see companies do more talent mapping.
Mm-hmm.
So in advance, if you know that companies A, B, and C are your competitors, then you know in advance where they're located. You know in advance the type of work they do. You know in advance what their job titles that they use to describe certain roles and what people do based on the job title. So if a job title is super programmer guy, then you can do some research in their job descriptions to see what a super programmer guy does.
Mm-hmm.
You can their profile to see how someone describes the work that they do. If you build a database of that kind of information, then when you're ready to build your super awesome widget, you can say, I want you to go, you tell the recruiter or the hiring manager, go to company 1, 2, and 3. I want you specifically to target supercomputer guys from these companies because based on job descriptions, based on their LinkedIn profile, based on resumes, in our ATS, based on casual conversations that our recruiters have had, these type of individuals, people with this job title at these companies are definitely the people we want. So don't waste your time per se looking for everybody. Look specifically for these people with these titles at these companies in these locations. Saves time. And I think companies will save themselves a lot of time. They will be more productive. They get more of their magical widgets done.
Mm-hmm.
They take time to proactively map out the talent way before they need it.
Way before they need it. Awesome. So you spoke earlier about employer branding. How much of an impact does employer branding have on the recruitment process?
Yeah, I think that depends on the candidate. and this is what I mean by that. All right, so you have candidates that are more qualified, the purple squirrels, those who are like super good at what they do and they're always being hounded.
Mm-hmm.
They will more than likely have several options because they're so senior or because they're so good or because they're just out there and people know about them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be more choicey,
Right.
And candidates that they'll say, okay, you want to hire me, but let me sort of check you out. If I don't hear good things about you when I'm doing my search online or talk to my friends, then perhaps, I'm not going to go with you. But if on the flip side, if you have a candidate who just needs a job to pay the bills, and they're not very career minded, they're not looking at this role. If I get this role, that'll help me proceed to the next step in my career ambitions. If it's not that kind of job in their view, they say, look, I just need a job to pay the bills, then the employer brand won't matter so much, which is why I think that Amazon, as great a company as they are, they can still recruit several warehouse workers despite all the negative publicity they have been receiving lately.
Right.
They treat their warehouse workers. Despite all that publicity that they're getting, they're still hiring warehouse workers en masse from various locations. Those are people who need a job, who just need to put food on the table, so to speak. So that is not a secret how the warehouse workers are living, but people are still applying, people are still being hired. Right. So that's where the employer brand matters least with low-skilled workers, but it matters most with highly coveted skilled workers.
Gotcha. So there are different strategies that recruiters use to get people in the door. One of the top trends that was brought out in early 2019 is about recruitment marketing. What are some of your thoughts on that strategy?
I think recruitment marketing is crucial. I think that it is the future of sourcing. For those who don't understand the difference, sourcing is pretty much finding the people out there by any kind of means and getting them interested in the role. Recruiter, of course, does a little bit of that, but mostly recruiters more focused on negotiating with the candidate, negotiating with the hire, making the hire, and so on. So there's that. So when it comes to recruitment marketing, I see it as very crucial for a variety of reasons. Okay, so one reason is that for mental health reasons, I think a lot of people are abandoning social media. You read a lot of articles about how people are saying, I'm taking a break from Facebook or Twitter for now because it's just so toxic right now. So people are turning away from social media because of that. And then you also hear every other week, it seems like, some news report about Facebook and their lack of privacy, how they've been breached, or how some other company has been breached, and a lot of data is being out there because of hackers and so forth. So I think the combination of those things and other factors as well will stop people, will incentivize people to not make so much of their information public. You know, although Facebook has been under fire a lot for their privacy issues, I read recently that they still have retained the overall majority of their users, which tells me that people are so addicted to Facebook that they won't leave it alone completely, although there are people who have. But I think they're going to be choicier about what they put up there. They're going to be more engaged in terms of privacy and how to use the privacy tools that are available to them. All that to say, I think that it would be in the company's best interest to attract talent more so than look for talent that's out there. Because if people stop placing their information online, you're going to have to attract them all the more. And if you can't attract the person that you want to hire, at the very least, you want to attract people who could potentially give you a referral to the people you want to hire. And that is actually one of the reasons why I joined ClickIQ, which is an automated job advertising platform. We have a platform that we post different opportunities to the job boards, to Google. We post them out there to social like Facebook, Instagram, and so forth, all for the purpose of attracting people to a particular job board. Because once people stop putting information out there, then of course we have to attract them, and then we also engage with chatbots, that kind of thing. So marketing with a combination of a chatbot, which is what we're doing here at ClickIQ, is definitely a 1-2 punch that involves our clients. But I think even if someone does not do it as we do it, they still have to market their company online. They have to get the attention of candidates different ways. So, yeah, I feel like I sort of rambled that, but yeah, there you go.
Awesome. So McKinsey released a report last June about some of the ways in which the future of work is being shaped by artificial intelligence and automation, and how machines will be able to carry out some of the current tasks that humans do right now, and even complement the work that humans do, or even perform tasks that go beyond what humans can do. What are some of the functions that you see coming up in the future of work over the next 3 to 5 years that will be critical for recruiters and even HR professionals to understand?
Sure. From the recruiting perspective, there is a lot of concern or anxiety or intense interest. I'll say intense interest about automation when it comes to recruiting, because you have tools like chatbots that can pre-screen candidates, and so and then you also have tools out there that can find candidates for you as well. So if you have tools that can find candidates and you have tools that can speak to candidates, that puts recruiters in a bit of concern, because of what they're thinking, wow, a machine can do my job. And so to that, I always try to dissuade that type of anxiety, because I don't see automation and robots taking recruiters' jobs away. I see it taking away certain duties, perhaps, but not the entire job. I see recruiting function really morphing. I can see recruiters becoming more like marketing strategists and relationship managers who focus effort on priority job requisitions, optimizing the time to can fill more critical roles. I see recruiters becoming brand agents, where they're monitoring the employer brand, in order to make changes to design to attract top talent. I see recruiters becoming focused on just closing the deal, whether that's spending the majority of their time speaking to candidates, negotiating offers, or spending a lot of their time talking to hiring managers, getting a really good understanding of what they want, put the two together. I definitely see that happening more so. Not that it's already happening, but I see that even more so.
Right.
Recruiters as prospectors, I mentioned earlier about how some companies may not see the transferable skills For example, I gave someone looking for admin, and I consider someone doing event planning because the administrative assistant isn't on that resume. Mm-hmm. But I think recruiters doing more things like that, looking for unique potential of job seekers, mm-hmm. and engaging them in that way a lot more than before. That's from a recruiting perspective, and all of that takes interpersonal skills, dealing with people. It takes mm-hmm. creativity when you're doing the marketing and being a brand agent, that kind of thing. It's definitely being empathetic with trying to tell people, having empathy and those soft skills. Mm-hmm. So I see that being more in the forefront of recruiting as opposed to finding candidates and pre-screening them, which will have tools for that. So that's on the recruiting side. From the workplace side, I see this trend. I won't call it alarming. I'll just call it interesting, where companies are sacrificing employee privacy for the sake of efficiency. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, I've been seeing a lot of different experiments more and more around this in the name of efficiency. So a couple examples. Amazon, they have a couple of patents that they've been talked about in the news lately. Mm-hmm. One is a wristband that a worker in a warehouse would wear, and the wristband would monitor your movements and where you are in the warehouse, the work you're doing. Mm-hmm. And if your hand isn't moving fast enough, or it's not in a proper position to do whatever, then you might get a notification. I want to say note, I'm not really sure. Notification that mm-hmm. Your hand isn't in the optimum space to be as efficient as possible in your work. Mm-hmm. Something else that Amazon is doing too, they have this thing called these VR goggles. And if you're in virtual reality, you put these goggles on and you're able to enter a different world. Mm-hmm. Well, the goggles that Amazon is patented, they're more augmented reality, which for those who are familiar with maybe Pokemon Go, mm-hmm. for example, or some of these Facebook apps where you put a filter on your picture or your video and like you're breathing fire or you look like a rat. That's augmented reality. Right? Mm-hmm. So a worker, say I'm a new worker, right? And I'm working in a house and I don't know what's going on. I put on these augmented reality goggles and I'm walking through the warehouse and little arrows will say, this is where this box goes. And this is where this thing goes. And you should go from here to there. And if an alarm goes off, these are the arrows. These arrows will point you to the way to the nearest exit, that kind of stuff. So that part is cool because if I am new and I need to ramp up to speed really fast, then I can put on these goggles and I get instructions before my very eyes, and I can work more efficiently and quickly. Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that is that Amazon is looking through my eyes, so to speak, through these goggles. They know what I'm looking at. They know what I'm doing. They know where I am at all times in that warehouse. God forbid I forget to take them off when I go to the bathroom. That's the sake of efficiency. There's a company in Wisconsin called Red Square Market that is microchipping their employees. Mm-hmm. It's voluntary as of now. I don't know if you've heard of that. But the microchip they implant is the size of a grain of rice. They implant it between your thumb and forefinger. Mm-hmm. And once that implant is in your hand, you're able to wave it over a fob and enter into the office. Or you're able to wave it over a fob and make copies, mm-hmm. or buy food from the vending machine or get something from the cafeteria, things like that. All for the sake of efficiency. I'm not a fan of it because I don't see how it brings any more value than, say, a key card. Mm-hmm. But that is something that's happening. It's already happened a lot in Sweden, where people have been putting microchips inside of their feet so that when they walk to a train station, they don't have to reach into their pocket and pay. They would just automatically go through the gate. The gate would read information off of the microchip in their feet, and they would go on to the train. Something I think that is very weird, Mm-hmm. But it's not all doom and gloom. I have seen some examples where I think that's pretty cool, and I like how they're applying the mm-hmm. technology. And in that regard, there's this company, I forget where they are, but the company's called Percolata or Percolata. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's Percolatta. Percolata.
Okay.
And what they do is they work with retail outlets. So they install sensors inside of the retail store. So let's say it's QT, for example. QT is where you are. It's a convenience store / gas station for those who are familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So Percolata will come in, they'll put sensors up all throughout the store and all outside of the store on the property and so forth. Right. Mm-hmm. But once these sensors are in place, they're collecting data, and then once they have sufficient data, they're able to help you manage your workforce. And this is an example, a real example of what they could do once these sensors are in and the data is collected.
Do you think that this type of technology, does it err on the side of more efficiency, or do you think it can easily spill over into employees having a lack of privacy in their work?
Both.
Okay.
But I'm gonna finish telling you about Percolata. I did not tell you how it infringes on privacy.
Mm-hmm.
So Percolata, I can as a manager, Percolata will tell me, okay, hey, you know what? Whenever you have Jim in the store, sales go up 10% because he's always upselling additional things at the register.
Mm-hmm.
When Danny's in the store, people will stay a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Because they like talking to her. She's very engaging with the customers. So people stay in the store longer, then you'll be able to sell more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
According to the weather, it's going to be a beautiful sunny day this weekend. There's a football stadium a mile away from your store.
Mm-hmm.
We anticipate a lot of foot traffic. So on Saturday, make sure you have Jim and Danny in the store, and you should increase sales by 18%. That is something that you can do with that. So that is the good side of that.
Right.
Usually,
very cool.
You monitor what's going on and increase sales. That's one. Now, where it may get a little bit dark is if you are a gig worker and you are managed by an app.
Mm-hmm.
If you're managed by an app, you're managed by an algorithm, right? So, for example, if you are an Uber driver or an Uber driver, for example, they have this thing called surge pricing,
mm-hmm.
where you get notifications saying that you need to go down to the airport because we have a lot of customers there. If you go to the airport and pick up customers there, we'll increase your commission by 5%, something
mm-hmm.
like that.
Right.
1 hour to 5, you're going to do that. So that's cool, right? But by virtue of you having that app on your phone, you are being monitored at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Monitoring how fast you drive, how often you brake. It's monitoring how quickly you pick people up, how many people you refuse to pick up, that kind of thing. And so it takes in all the information and is monitoring you, and it starts to manage you.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, it might put you in Uber timeout and not let you see who is available to be picked up because you violated, you've driven too fast, or you brake too much for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Not only Uber, but also Lyft and other ride-sharing apps. And you also have these other big apps like TaskRabbit and other things like that, where you're totally being monitored through an app.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have any privacy in a lot of cases. I won't say every case, but in a lot of cases, even when you turn the app off, it's still monitoring you. So the app knows where you are pretty much at all times, even when you think you've had it turned off. So you have no privacy in that regard.
Right.
So yeah, that's where it gets really, really interesting.
Wow. Interesting technology, but definitely it comes at a cost. Switching gears a little bit, how much differently should recruiters think about recruiting millennials as opposed to recruiting baby boomers in this digital age?
Sure. Speaking totally stereotypically, because everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
But stereotypically speaking, baby boomers, when you consider them or hire them, more than likely you're getting someone with a lot of experience by virtue of their age. They tend to be very loyal in that they will stay on the job longer than millennials will. And they have a lot of interpersonal skills
mm-hmm.
that I think baby boomers take for granted that millennials tend not to have.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking stereotypically. Millennials, they have fresh perspectives. They see things differently, of course, because they're younger. They're very ambitious, which is good. And they have a lot of technical skills. If I were recruiting baby boomers, I probably would offer great benefits, especially in terms of healthcare. I would mention the career ladder so that when they join us, I'll say, if you join us today, you may be, this senior position over the course of 5+ years, something like that. So career ladder. Also would offer them entrepreneurial opportunities, chances to create new products or services underneath the company umbrella over time. I think those are things that would appeal to baby boomers. For millennials, I would offer them a lot of training. They tend to job hop quite a bit, which used to be a bad thing. But now it's just considered normal.
Yeah.
It's just normal reality. So knowing that they're going to hop around a bit, if I wanted to hire them, I'll say, hey, come work for me. I know you're only going to be here for a certain amount of time. But while you work for me, I'm going to train you on all these different skills, all the different devices, all the different tools and processes. So it'll be a boom to your career because all the trainings you get working for me. I also will give you a lot of a lot of feedback because millennials tend to want to know how am I doing right now. Don't wait till the year and give me an annual report. Don't tell me a year from now how I'm doing. Tell me today how I'm doing. Otherwise, I want to keep doing the good thing or stop doing the bad thing.
Right. The real-time feedback and real-time coaching. Absolutely.
And then in that regard, I also would mention a mentoring program. Someone to be the Yoda, the guide them throughout the way, And I think that's important too, because having a mentor for millennials will help with the interpersonal skills, which seem to stereotypically diminish over time. And so it'll help them in ways beyond the company. And I think they would recognize that. So those are different things I would do to recruit those two different groups.
Cool. Final question. If you could change one thing about recruiting today as opposed to a decade ago, what would it be?
Okay. I'll try not to get on my soapbox. One thing that I would like to see is recruiters being licensed the same way a hairdresser gets a license, the same way a dentist gets a license, or a doctor, or anybody else. Recruiters don't have a license. Anybody can just pick up a phone and say, hey, I'm a recruiter. And how do you check that out? How do you get their credentials? I mean, you can do a reference check based on, maybe what you see on LinkedIn, but you don't really know, So I would like to see a code of ethics that's enforced by financial penalties. I mean, there are organizations out there, SHRM, for example, Society of Human Resource Management. There's also other groups out there that have a code of conduct that they purport to promote to their members, that their members may swear by, per se, but without some sort of financial penalty or legal penalty. What's really keeping people on the straight and narrow in that regard? So I would like to see some sort of governing body across the board. I don't know if it's a government agency, perhaps it is, just so that there can be some sort of financial or legal penalty if you significantly break a code of conduct, like a Better Business Bureau.
Gotcha.
Also would like to see recruiters go to charm school, which is maybe an antiquated concept. But again, back in my day, when you were a young kid, maybe teenager or so, if you're a young man or a young lady, charm school would teach you how to use good manners, how to walk with a book on your head, how to make eye contact, things like that. If you do a search on DuckDuckGo or Bing or Google, what a search engine, do a search on millennials losing interpersonal skills, which again is every millennial, but dealing with stereotypes. There's a lot of research and articles out there about how millennials are losing the ability to look someone in the eye and have a conversation with them. Some blame tech addiction for that. Some blame other factors, but I think all that to say is if it was mandatory that you had to go to some kind of charm school to learn how to interact with people, that would be great. Also would like to see it required that alongside the training that recruiters do some sort of community service where they have to deal with people, not animals, not picking trash, but dealing with people, because that would help them to develop empathy. I think that it may be alarming to some people or just surprising to some people to see how impatient they are if they are working in a homeless shelter feeding soup to hungry people. And they're like, I'm in a hurry. Come on. And you have to deal with someone that you maybe not used to dealing with.
Right.
It'll really help with your interpersonal skills and help you realize things about yourself more so than the other person. And then finally, I would like to see recruiters should be required, I would think, to undergo sales training and also email marketing certification. There are some companies out there that will certify you in email marketing. I think that is as popular as social media is. Email is the one constant from 2 decades ago when I started to now, and I don't see going away. Because even if you join Pinterest today, the first thing they'll ask is, what's your email address?
Right.
So it always comes down to email. So I would think that it would be a company's best interest to make sure recruiters are certified so they know how to create an email marketing campaign and the difference between an email marketing campaign and spamming candidates. Yeah. That's
awesome. Awesome. Jim, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. This has been an interesting discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you could tell us where people can find out a little bit more about you, maybe your podcast, your website.
Sure. On a personal side, you can catch up on me on my blog, which is jimstroud.com, JIMSTROUD.com. There you'll see my videos. You'll see my podcasts. You may see some of my comics in there somewhere as well. If you want to know how to automate your job advertising and maximize your media spend, send me an email at jim@clickiq.us. That's jim@CLICKIQ.us. Operators are standing by.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time. Guys, thanks for listening to this interview. For these and other interviews and topics, please visit techfunnel.com. You can connect with us across social on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter where you can stay up to date on everything that's happening in the industry. Thank you so much again, Jim. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.